Betsy and father were eventually caught, sent to prison where her father died, and to a concentration camp where her sister died. Corrie was released and told her story of intrigue, pain, and suffering, and forgiveness, all through God's strength. After the presentation today, Corrie will be answering questions directly, and she'll be remaining in character as Corrie ten Boom in 1979. So let's listen in on this fascinating story with Deke Collier portraying Corrie ten Boom. Miss ten Boom. Willkommen.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today with you. This is wonderful. I get to share my incredible life with you today. Yes, I was born in Haarlem, Holland, the youngest of 4 children. My father was a watchmaker, and like many other people on our street, his watch shop was on the bottom floor, and we lived in the floors above there. All across the street, people doing the same thing. Now, by the time that World War II broke out in Europe, my father, my sister Betsy, and I were the only ones still living at home. You see, my mother had passed away, and my older sister, Molly, and my brother Willem had already married and moved away as well. So just the 3 of us left at home, and my sister Betsy was also a watchmaker too. And we worked long hours in my father's watch shop. Now, we always thought, as soon as that war broke out, we thought that we could remain neutral again. You see, Holland had been a peace-loving country all along and had remained neutral in wars probably for 100 years before World War II began. One night, the Dutch Prime Minister came on the radio. And of course, every night we listened to the radio. And the Dutch Prime Minister says, "Oh, you have nothing to fear. I've spoken with the people involved in this war, and they reassured me that we can remain neutral again." That very night, my sister Betsy and I were awakened with sounds of explosions. It was the Germans. They had invaded without provocation. Oh, frustrating, and all the agony of hearing what was going on. For 5 days, our brave Dutch army fought, but the Luftwaffe, much too strong for us. Dutch Prime Minister said it's better to give in to the Germans and not have any more Dutch blood spilled. So we capitulated to them. Oh, the Germans said all they really wanted to do was integrate with our financial system, which was very strong and very good at the time. They wanted much more than that. So they were making rules for us. The German soldiers were all up and down our streets, making sure these rules got followed. One of those rules was that we could have no radios. They came house to house taking our radios. Secretly, we kept one hidden in one of the stairs. And they also said that the newspaper had to be run by the Nazis. And why do you suppose no radios and no newspapers except them? You may answer.
To control information.
Oh, very good. This is a smart lady right here, I can tell. That is right. There are news only. Then also, they made rules that said that if we were to be able to buy food, we had to go to the ration card office and get a ration card and register. And you could only have a ration card for each member of your family. So we were only allowed to get 3 ration cards. And then they made rules saying that there were curfews. Couldn't be outside. It got earlier and earlier until it was 6 p.m. No one could be outside. That meant that I had to cancel the club that I had started for young ladies 12 to 18 years old, where they learn music and hiking and camping and gymnastics. It doesn't look much like gymnastics now, but at one time it was pretty good. And the thing that I hated to cancel the most was the club that I had for the mentally challenged young people, where I taught them that they were loved and cared for, and they had a purpose in life. Oh, things went from bad to worse. One Sunday afternoon, our young people, what is that term that you use? They hang out together? Is that right? They hung out together on the street. And the German soldiers came and they took all of our young men that hung out together. Some of them we never saw again. Others escaped and told us they had been taken to Germany to be slaves in the factories there. But most of them, we understood, were conscripted into the German army. It seemed like the Germans had a special hatred for certain groups of people. One of them was the Jews. We had many friends who were Jews. We didn't care. They were our friends. We loved them. We never understood why they had such hatred for certain groups of people. Why there were people on our street that had the shops, and they were Jews, and they were our friends, and we loved them. I'll never forget sitting in my father's watch shop. I believe it was November of 1941. My sister Betsy and I were working on the watches. You see, the German soldiers had watches that needed to be fixed. So we had German soldiers coming in all the time. So we were working on their watches. And we heard glass break across the street. We looked out the window, and there were German soldiers breaking the window of Mr. Bayel's fur store. He sold furs there, and he was a Jew. They were taking his furs, and they took Mr. Bayel and they threw him in the muddy street. We couldn't let him stay that way. He was our friend. And so as soon as the soldiers were gone, we went out, got Mr. Bayel, got him all dried off. But what could we do with him? My brother Willem had a big house out in Hilversum in the countryside. My brother and his family had been helping Jews that had escaped from Germany to be able to come to his house, and he was able to find ways for them to get either to England or to America. So I figured he would probably know what to do. So I called his house, and my brother was not home, but his 22-year-old son named Keith was home. And I said, Keith, what do we do with Mr. Bayet? He said, Tante Corrie, don't worry about that. And after dark tonight, we'll come and take care of him. 9 o'clock, knock at the door. It was my nephew Keith. And he took Mr. Bayet, and I kept the door open just a little way so I could watch them as they walked down the street hugging the shadows. A couple of weeks later, I saw Keith in town. I said, hey, Keith, what happened to Mr. Bayel? He says, Tante Corrie, if you're going to head to Dutch Underground, don't ask any questions. Well, I suppose Betsy and I were officially, or unofficially, helping the Dutch Underground. More and more Jews came to our house. But what were we going to do? We only had the 3 ration cards, only enough to feed, and barely feed my father and my sister and me. And so, what could I do? I prayed and asked God, show me what to do and how to feed these people. That's when I remembered Fred Koenstra. Fred Koenstra's daughter had been in one of the clubs that I had for the young ladies, where they learned camping and hiking, music and gymnastics. Fred Koenstra worked in the ration card office. Could he help me? would he help me? You know, people were turning each other in all the time to get a better job or to get more food. I didn't know what Fred would do, but I had to ask him. So I went to his home after dark one night. Wasn't supposed to be out, but I was still out. And Fred saw me at the door. He pulled me inside and he said, "Don't you ask me about those ration cards, Corrie. Don't, because every day the numbers are counted, they're lined up, they're put under lock and key. There's no way that anybody can get any more ration cards unless there's a robbery." I think I know just the man for that. I saw Fred a few days later, bruised and bandaged, arm all tied up with bandages, and he handed me a stack of 100 ration cards. It was a miracle. I was so excited. Of course, I let my brother know because he needed some for the people that he was helping. But my goodness, I can now help even more people. Willem says, "Corrie, you and Betsy need to come to the meeting at the Dutch Underground, and then you can hand them out to other people too." Where we went, and oh my goodness, not only were we able to give out the ration cards, but we found out how to get a government car, how to get government papers, and an architect. Oh, by the way, all of the people we were introduced to there, they were either Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith. Why do you suppose they were called that? You may speak it out, it's okay. Security! More smart people. Are they all on this side of the room? We'll see later about over there. So the architect named Mr. Smith said, "I understand your house is kind of an interesting one." You see, it had originally been two smaller homes that over the years joined together. And it had interesting twists and turns. Don't try to go up the stairs fast, by the way. But so he said, maybe if we could build you a false wall or a false room in your home. He came to my house and looked all over, and he said, "I found a perfect place to build a false wall. It's that last bedroom up there, my bedroom." What he did was genius. He built a false wall that was about 4 feet long, and it joined with the rest of the wall there, maybe 30 inches deep, and it had a panel at the bottom of it that when our guests, we called them our guests that were there, would go into that panel and be able to hide, maybe 4, 5, maybe 6, depending on how big they were. And then when the German soldiers would be gone from my father's watch shop, or sometimes German soldiers just went all throughout everybody's house looking for anything to arrest them for. So that panel on the inside of it had pulleys, so it could be open and they could escape when the Germans were gone. He made the outside wall of it look exactly stained and old, just like the rest of the walls in my bedroom. He also put a system of buzzers in. The buzzer, there was one near the front door of my father's watch shop. There was one near the stairs, and it made no sounds if you pushed them downstairs. They only buzzed upstairs. And that would be a signal to our guests that there were German soldiers in the house. That was genius to be able to do that and let them know. But they had to practice going from whatever they were doing to get into the angel room in 1 minute or less. If they were eating a meal, they had scrape plates, wash plates, put them in the cabinet, and go upstairs and get into the angel room. That's what we called that little false wall. If they were sleeping, and German soldiers sometimes came at night, and always there was someone watching for them. If they came at night, you have to turn the mattress over so you don't feel any warm spots. Practice all the time they were there. And then we would find places for them to be able to go to other lands that were safe. February 1944, I had a terrible case of the flu. Sick to my stomach, terrible headache, but we had a bunch of the German watches that had to be repaired. I was working anyway, all by myself that day, working away, thinking, oh, I feel Nietzsche's pile, I'm going to go back upstairs and get to bed. A man walked into my father's watch shop that I had never seen before. Frantically, he said, Corrie, you've got to help me. My wife is a Jew, he said. And she's been taken to the police station. She was arrested. They're going to send her, I don't know where. And Corrie, I found one of the police officers that I can bribe for 600 guilders. And that's about 1,000 of your dollars. And Corrie, I don't have that kind of money. Well, I didn't either. But I knew people who did. And he said, oh, can you help me? Can you help me? I said, go and come back in about an hour. Let me see if I can help you and get that money. I was able to get the money. He came back. I gave him the money. I went upstairs and went to bed. As soon as I laid my head on the pillow, I heard the German soldiers come into my father's shop downstairs. They were slamming doors. They were going throughout the house. They were screaming, where are the Jews? I know you have them hidden here. I know you have a false room. Where are those Jews? Screaming, throwing everything, cabinets, dumping everything everywhere. I saw our guests go into the angel room, and just as that panel went down, the German soldiers came into my room, into my bedroom, grabbed me off of the bed and said, where are the Jews? I know you're hiding the Jews someplace. Tell me where they are. I didn't want to lie to anybody, but I had to protect these people. I knew that terrible things were planned for them, and I had to protect them. And so I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've had the flu. I've been sick all day. And he began to beat me. He's slapping my face from side to side. I could taste the blood in my mouth. And he threw me down on the bed, and I heard the soldiers go in and start beating my sister Betsy. Betsy was a very smart lady. She acted like a crazy lady. She said, oh, the Jews? Oh, there they are. They're under the table. No, that's stuff. Oh, no, they're up on the roof. We did have a place up on the roof to get fresh air and sunshine. And so they went up there. Of course, they weren't there. They went all over the house. The only thing they found incriminating was extra ration cards. But that was enough to arrest us. They arrested my father, who was in his 80s, my sister Betsy, and me, took us to the police station. Oh, it was 9 o'clock. By then, every night, my father always had prayer and read from the Bible, and he began to quote from Psalm 119. You're my hiding place and shield. Lift me up, I will be safe. Gave us all comfort. The next day, we were taken to a prison near The Hague. I was put into a cell all by myself because I still had the flu. We were told, they were hollering down the halls, you cannot say a word. Imagine, no communication at all. I didn't know about my father or my sister. And all I knew was in my cell, there was a straw mattress on the floor, and a blanket that someone had thrown up on. They gave us for breakfast some thin porridge. I believe you call that oatmeal. And then for dinner, one slice of black bread. Despite not very nutritious food, I was able to gain my strength. They called down the halls. You're going to be interrogated. You'll be asked questions. You might as well tell them what they want now, because they'll just ask until they find out. Interrogation. I didn't know exactly what that would mean, but my turn for interrogation came. They took me into a room. There was a Gestapo officer, a desk, and a chair. He had me sit down. He said, "Tell me about your activities." I told him about the club I had for the girls 12 to 18, where I taught them music and hiking and camping and gymnastics. And he said, "I don't care about that. Tell me about your other activities." And I said, "Oh, the best thing is I have a club for the mentally challenged young people, where I taught them that they were valuable and they had a purpose in life and that they were loved." He said, "Mentally challenged? They should all be killed or experimented on." I went, "Oh, no, sir. No, they have a purpose in life. And, sir, you do too, and you're not living your purpose." He said, "Get out of here. I don't want to talk to you." I was taken back to my cell, brought back the next day, and he began to ask me about a purpose in his life. And I began to tell him what it was and how much he was loved. He couldn't believe that. And then he handed me a stack of papers, a big stack of papers. He said, "Can you explain this? But first, let me tell you, your father has passed away." He had only been in the prison about 10 days when he died. Old man with health issues, I understand. The stack of papers I was looking through, it was the names and addresses of everybody in the Dutch underground. Someone had given that to him. And I looked at him with tears welling up in my eyes. I said back and went, I can't explain it. And he did something I will never forget. He took that stack of papers and threw it in the fire. They were all safe. All those people were going to be safe. And he said, "You may go." A few days later, the warden came in and she gave me this package and she said, "Your sister Nolly has sent you a package." I could tell it had already been opened. They went through it. What I did not notice is the stamp on the outside was crooked, the edges curled up, and it looked like there was writing underneath. So after the warden left, looked around, I peeled it back, and it said, "All watches in the cabinet are safe." What do you suppose that meant? All watches in the cabinet are safe.
People in the underground.
Absolutely. All those that were hiding in the angel room were safe. The people in the underground were safe. What an incredible, exciting word that was. We were told that we were, and then I opened it. You want to see what's inside too, don't you? So I opened this, and I found out there was a red towel. My sister Nolly knows that I love red. It's my favorite color. But I could feel something inside. Why, she sent me biscuits. Nolly makes the best biscuits ever. And so I was so hungry. I began eating, and a few crumbs fell on the floor. These were very large cracks in the concrete floor. And out of one of the cracks came a mouse and ate the crumbs I had dropped. And he ran back into the crevice again. Now I had a friend I could talk to whenever I got lonely. Not long later, I was told, all of us along there, I still didn't know about Betsy, still could not talk to each other. We were told, gather your belongings because you have 10 minutes before you're being moved to a different prison. That didn't take long. So we were sent out into the courtyard. I found my sister Betsy. We hugged each other. We went on to they had big old cattle trucks that they were moving us to the south part of Holland to where a factory was. And we worked there, making the parts for the German aircraft radios. You better believe I made a lot of mistakes. If I had been caught, I could have been shot or tortured or both. But I was there. We weren't there very long. It had now been June of 1944. Rumors were spreading in the prison camp that the Allies had invaded Europe. Oh my goodness, how exciting. We just knew any minute they were going to come and set us free. One night we heard explosions and we just knew it was the Allies on their way to get us. No, it was the Germans blowing up their own bridges and roads. Why do you suppose they did that? Yeah, so they couldn't get there, our Allies couldn't. At that point, they came and told us they were moving us to a prison camp in Germany. As we went out into the courtyard, women were on one side of the prison camp, men on the other. They were loading us into railroad cars for the several-day journey to Germany. We heard gunshots on the other side where the men were. The women were frantic. They were husbands and brothers and fathers that were over there. They didn't know who was being killed and who was not. We did find out that it was the oldest and the weakest and the feeblest were shot, several hundred shot, after they dug their own graves. We were taken into the Ravensbrück prison by railroad car. Stood outside 2 days in the pouring rain while they processed us. Then my sister Betsy and I were put into a barracks that had been built for about 400 men. It had been military barracks, but there were 700 of us there, which meant Betsy and I were sleeping together on a bunk bed. And the women were just frantic in our barracks because all of the mattresses were filled with swarming fleas and lice. And we found out from the other women, because they had us on work detail, every day we were to go to the railroad tracks, load heavy metal sheets. We were to put them on the carts, take them up the hill to the factory all day long, and we had a quota. As we were talking with the other women, they said that they did not have fleas and lice in their barracks, but all night long, German soldiers came in and bothered the women all night. They never came into our barracks because of the swarming fleas and lice. Betsy said, oh, we need to thank God for the fleas and lice. No, I couldn't do that. It just made me hate those German soldiers even more so. One more thing, they were cruel. If people were sick, like Betsy got very, very sick. But I couldn't take her to the infirmary because her fever had to be 105 to go to the infirmary. And one day she was so sick, She was trying hard to meet her quota. A guard grabbed her out of line, took his butt of his gun, and slammed her hand. I went after him. I wanted to kill him. And if it weren't for Betsy, I think I probably would have tried. But Betsy said, no, Corrie, no, you must forgive him. There's no pit so deep, God's love is not deeper still. You need to forgive him. And it just made the hatred boil inside of me. Betsy did get so sick. One night, we were about to go to sleep, and Betsy, with a terrible fever, terrible sickness, she said, Corrie, I see a beautiful 2-story White House, garden all around it. Inside, it's got a curved wooden staircase. Corrie, I think after the war, we're going to help people in that very house. People who have been so hurt in this war. I thought it was delirium on her part. A few days later, I knew her fever had spiked, and I had to take her to the infirmary. I was afraid I would never see her again. You see, there were gray chimneys next to the infirmary that belched putrid smoke all day that burned bodies of those who were dying. I took Betsy that night to the infirmary and wanted to go in with her. And they said, no, you can't do that. You come back tomorrow and see how your sister is. I'll let you come in then. I didn't sleep all night, thinking about what was happening and how sick my sister was. The next morning, I went early to check on her. And I said, oh, no, we're not going to tell you. We don't know where she is. You look in all the windows and you tell us which window and we'll let you in there. I would take the edge of my dress, December 1944. Ice all over the windows. I looked first in one window and another and another and another. I found her. She was at the very last window. Her body was on a table with those who had died that night. No more pain, no more suffering. Peace in the face of an angel. Oh, my heart broke. My heart broke for her. But I know I'd see her again, but oh, my heart broke. Betsy, I felt numb after that. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care what happened to me. It didn't matter. 2 weeks later, New Year's Eve, 1944, 4 a.m., we were outside, stomping our feet, rubbing our arms, wondering what did they have planned for us that day. After a roll call, the guard said, Prisoner Ten Boom, report to administration. I had no idea. I didn't care. I went to the administration office, and the lady at the door, the clerk there, stamped this card with this word in Latin. Any of you speak German or want to guess as to what it meant?
Released.
Released. Oh, smart people everywhere. And she said, you're to take this card. You go over there, you get the railroad pass to go back to Holland. Over there, you get some clothes, and then you have to leave us right now. I was still numb, hardly believing this. I went over and got the railroad pass. I got my clothing. I went out the door towards the gate. And there are the catwalks all along were German soldiers pointing their guns at me with their snarling dogs. And I had to show this to all of them and to the guard at the main gate. I went back to the railroad terminal there, the depot, got on the train, went back to my beloved town of Harlem. It didn't look anything like the Harlem I had left. I went to my home, no furniture, no appliances, no sheets or dishes, nothing left in my home. They had taken it all. But I remembered that I had heard that all watches in the cabinet were saved and that they had escaped. And this, I found out after the war, this was a clerical error. She stamped it the wrong thing. The next week, all the women my age, I was in my 50s at the time, all the women in their 50s and up were shot. Clerical error? I don't think so. On purpose. And so I wondered, why was I saved? Why was I given this and escaped, basically? Now, I wasn't in very good health after being in Ravensbrück. So as a nurse who lived down the street from me in Harlem, helped me to find medicine and food. And then after the war, the strangest thing happened. People were curious as to what happened in the concentration camps. I was one of the few survivors. I knew what had happened. You see, without radio, without newspaper, they knew nothing. Not only people in Holland, people all throughout Europe wanted to know what had happened. So I began speaking different places. At one speaking engagement, a lady came up to me afterwards and she said, I know you want to help people who have been so badly hurt in this war. My son was released from a prison camp too. I'm so grateful. You can have my house. Guess what it looked like? Big, beautiful two-story home, garden in the front, curved staircase inside. And we have been helping people hurt in this war in that house that we call the Angel House ever since the war. Well, we have doctors, nurse, psychologists, priests, rabbis, pastors, and so anyone who can help, because we found it wasn't just the bodies that were hurt, but their minds, their emotions, their spirits, all needed to be mended. And that's where they get that. And that's why I go all over the world speaking about that. Excuse me. So what else have I done with them? I got stronger. People kept asking me to go places. And I spoke many times in Germany. The German people, most of them had no idea what was happening either. And so one of the most difficult speaking engagements was in Germany. The room was packed. There was only standing room. Literally, it's people standing all along the walls. As I was speaking, I recognized one of the men standing at the wall in the back. He was one of the cruelest guards in Ravensbrück. I still wanted to kill him. The hatred rolling up in me. If he had been closer, I may have slapped him in the face or something. But afterwards, as people were leaving, he started walking towards me. Tears rolling down his face, hands stretched out as he was going, Corrie, I'm so sorry. Corrie, forgive me. I could have killed him. I really could have. But instead, I knew that was wrong. I knew I had to forgive him. I didn't have the strength to do it, so I asked God to give me strength. As I reached out my hand and said, I forgive you. It may have been the hardest thing I ever did, but it was the most freeing thing I ever did. I felt that burden lift from me, that hatred that had been building since the first day of the war. I was free. And I realized as we are helping people in the Angel House, those people who are able to forgive forgive them are the ones who make the best recovery. Their minds are clear. Their emotions are clear when they have forgiven. Now, I haven't told you my story for you to be mad at any group of people or any period of time, but to let you know that former enemies can reconcile. They can be at peace with others if they choose to do that and forgive. And so as I go about the world and share this story, take that idea with you. If you need to forgive someone, you're the one who will be free. I discovered that my enemy was not the Nazis. It was my attitude towards the Nazis. And now I am free from that. So do you have questions for me? Yeah?
I only have one for.
Oh.
The only question I had, did you live in the same town where Anne Frank and her family lived?
Anne Frank was not in Harlem. She was in Amsterdam.
In Amsterdam. And were you aware of?
No, not at the time, no. We
Of
were
course, they
so
never were.
wrapped up in trying to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have heard of her since.
Right.
I know she wrote a very interesting book. I have written several books too. One of them is called The Hiding Place, and they made a movie of it. Matter of fact, the producers, when they were getting ready to to take the book into a movie, they asked me to move to California. Let me tell you, there are some strange people in California. Any other questions? Yeah. Wait, sir, with the microphone.
Can you explain why more recently we hear more and more people who don't believe that this happened? Like there's something about this time, or maybe it's not, I don't know. I just get the feeling like it's more recent.
I'm not sure of what it's now 1979, and I believe that it happened because I lived it. I only can testify to what I was able to experience. Other questions? No? Thank you so much.
Corrie ten Boom had a series of strokes after 1979 that left her unable to speak for almost 5 years. She passed away on April 15, 1983, on her 91st birthday. Out of gratitude for risking their lives, to save hundreds of Jews during the Holocaust, the Yad Vashem in Israel honored the ten Boom family by granting them the title of Righteous Among the Nations. Their names are commemorated on the Mount of Remembrance in Jerusalem. Please join me by standing and singing our closing hymn, Building Bridges. We're going to go through it twice, not as a round.